Thud, thud, thud. Charlie startled out of sleep, disorientated. Something was banging on her door, trying to force its way in. "Oh, for goodness sake," Jessica said grumbly, and Shirley blinked and sat up. Right. The motel, Hurricane, someone was knocking on the door. As Jessica went to answer it, Shirley got out of bed and looked at the clock. It was 10 a.m. She looked out the window at the bright new day. She had slept worse than usual. Not nightmares, but dark dreams she could not quite remember. Things that stuck with her just beyond the back of her mind. Images she could not catch. Shirley! Someone was screeching. Shirley went to the door and found herself immediately enveloped in a hug. Marla's plump arms gripping her like a vice. Shirley hugged her back, tighter than she meant to. When Marla let go, she stepped back, grinning. Marla's moods had always been so intense they were contagious, spreading out to whoever was in her path. When she was gloomy, a pall fell over all of her friends, the sun gone behind her cloud. When she was happy like now, it was impossible to avoid the lift of her joy. She was always breathless, always slightly scattered, always giving the impression that she was running late. Though she almost never was, Marla was wearing a loose dark red blouse and it suited her well, setting off her fair skin and dark brown hair. Charlie had kept in better touch with Marla than the others. Marla was the type who made it easy to stay friends, even at a distance. Even as a little kid, she was always sending letters and postcards. Anya didn't if Charlie didn't respond to everyone. She was resolutely positive and assumed that everyone liked her unless they made it clear otherwise, using the proper expletives. Charlie admired about her. She herself, though not shy, was always calculating. Does that person like me? Are they just being polite? How do people tell the difference? Marla had came to visit her once when they were 12. She had charmed Charlie's aunt and made fast friends with her school friends, while still making it obtainably clear that she was Charlie's friend, and she was there only to see Charlie. Marla's gigantic smile turned serious as she studied Charlie, peering at her as if trying to spot the differences since they last met. "You're as pale as ever." She took Charlie's hands in her own. "You're all clammy. Did you ever get warm?" She dropped Charlie's hands and proceeded to study the motel room skeptically, as though uncertain exactly what it was. "It's the luxury style," Jessica said without expression, as she searched for something in her bag. Her hair was sticking up in all directions, and Charlie stifled a smile. It was nice to see something about Jessica in disarray for once. Jessica found her hairbrush and held it up triumphantly. "Ha! Take that, Morning Frizz." "Come on in," Charlie said, realizing she and Marla were still in the doorway. The door opened wide. Marla nodded. "One sec, Jason." She saw out the door. No one emerged. Jason, a young boy, came trotting out from the road. He was short and wiry, dark-skinned, than half his sister, than his half-sister. His Batman t-shirt and black shorts were made for someone twice his size. His hair was cut loose to his head, and his arms and legs were streaked with dirt. "Are you playing in the road?" Marla demanded. "No," he said. "Yes, you were. Don't do that. If you get yourself killed, Mom's gonna blame me. Get inside." Marla shoved her little brother inside and shook her head. "How old are you now?" Charlie asked. 11, Jason said. He went to the TV and started fiddling with buttons. "Jason, stop it," Marla said. "Play with your action figures." "I'm not a little kid," he said. "Anyway, they're in the car." But he stepped away from the television and went to look out the window. Marla rubbed her eyes. "We just got here. We had to leave at 6 this morning, and someone," she said pointedly, glancing over her shoulder at Jason, "wouldn't stop fiddling with the radio. I am so tired." She didn't seem tired, but then she never did. At their sleepovers as kids, Charlie remembered her bouncing around like a maniac, like the rest of them were winding out for the night. Then, falling asleep abruptly like a cartoon character who'd been hit over the head with a rolling pin. We should get ready, Jessica said. We're supposed to meet the guys at the dinner in an hour. Hooray, Marla said. We have to change too. I didn't get I didn't want to get all gross while we were driving. Jason, you can watch TV, Charlie said, and he looked at Marla. She nodded and he grinned and turned it on, starting to flip through channels. Please just pick a channel, Marla said. Charlie headed into the bathroom to get dressed while Jessica fuzzed with her hair. A little less than an hour later, they pulled into the diner parking lot. The others were already there in the same booth they'd been in the night before. When they got inside, Marla performed a second round of squeals and hugs, only slightly quieter now that they were in public. Overshadowed by her enthusiasm, Lamar stood and waved at Jessica, and Charlie waited until Marla sat down. Hi, guys, he said at last. He was wearing a dark tie and a dark gray suit. He was tall and thin, black with his hair shaved close to his head. His features were sharp and attractive, and he looked like a little older than the rest of them. It could have been the suit, but Charlie thought it was something about the way he stood, holding himself like he would be comfortable wherever he was. They had all dressed up a little for the ceremony. Marla had changed at the motel, and she and Jessica were both wearing dresses. Jessica was knee-high and covered in pastel flowers, a light fabric that moved as she walked. Marla's was simple, white with big sunflowers splashed over it. Charlie's hadn't thought to bring a dress, and she hoped she didn't look out of place in black pants and a white button-down shirt. John was wearing a light purple shirt today, though he had a matching tie in a slightly darker color. And Carlton seemed to be wearing an identical outfit as before, still in all black. They all sat down. Well, don't we all look nice? Marla said happily. Where's Jason? Jessica craned her head from side to side. Marla groaned. I'll be right back. She scooted out of the booth and hurried out the door. Lamar, what have you been up to? Charlie said. Lamar grinned. He is an Ivy League man, Carlton said, teasing. Lamar looked briefly down at the table, but he was smiling. Early acceptance was all he said. Which one? Jessica said, Cornell. Wait, how did you already apply to college? Charlie said. That's not till next year. I don't even know where I want to go to. He skipped sixth grade, John said. There was a brief flicker of something across his face, and Charlie knew what it was. John looked like being the clever one, the precocious one. Lamar had been kind of a goof off when they were kids, and now he had leapt ahead. John forced a grin, and the moment passed. Congratulations, he said, with no hint that it was not entirely sincere. Marla came bursting in again, this time towing Jason behind her, holding on his upper arm. At the hotel, she had made him change into a blazer and khakis as well, though he was still wearing his Nikes. I'm coming, stop it, he whined. Is that Jason? Carlton asked. Yeah, Jason said. Do you remember me? Carlton said. I don't remember any of you, Jason said unapologetically. Sit here, Marla said, pointing at the next booth over. Okay, he grumbled. Marla, you can sit with us, Jessica said. Jason, come over here. I want to sit here, he said, and sat up behind him. He pulled a video game out of his pocket and was oblivious to the world. The waitress came over and they ordered. Marla told her to put Jason's breakfast on their check. When their food came, Charlie checked her watch. We don't have a lot of time, she said. We'll get there, Carlton said. It's not far. A small piece of food fell out of his mouth as he gestured down the road. Have you been back to school? Lamar asked, and Carlton shrugged. I pass it sometimes. I know this is on the soldier trip for all of you, but I just live here. I don't exactly go around reminiscing about kindergarten all the time. They were all quiet for a second, the beeps and pings of Jason's video game filling the silence. Hey, did you know Lamar's going to Cornell next year? Jessica said to Marla. Really? Well, aren't you ahead of the pack? She said. Lamar looked down his plate. Then he looked up. He was a little flushed. All part of the 5-year plan, he said. They laughed, and his blush deepened. It's kind of weird to be back here, he said, hesitantly changing the subject. I think it's strange that I'm the only one who still lives here, Carlton said. Nobody ever leaves Hurricane. Is it strange, though? Jessica said thoughtfully. My parents, you remember? My mom's from New York originally. She used to joke about going back. When I go back to New York, but it might have been as well when I won the lottery. She didn't mean it, and then right after, she stopped joking about it. Then, 3 months later, we were all on a plane to visit her sister in Queens, and we never came back. My dad's father died when I was 9, and they came back to Hurricane for the funeral without me. They didn't want me going back here, and honestly, I didn't want to go. I was kind of anxious the whole time they were gone. I kept looking out of the window, hoping that they would come back early, like something bad was going to happen to them if they stayed. They looked at one another, considering Charlie knew they had all moved, all but Carlton, but she had never thought about it. People moved all the time. Carlton was right, though. People didn't leave Hurricane. We moved because my dad got a new job the summer after third grade, Jason John said. That's not exactly mysterious. Lamar, you left in the middle of the semester that year. Yeah, he said, but that's because when my parents split, I went with my mom to Indianapolis. He frowned. But my dad moved too. He's in Chicago now. My parents left because of Michael, Marla said. They all turned to her. Afterward, my mom couldn't sleep. She said spirits were stirring in the town, unquiet. My dad told her she was being ridiculous, but we still left as fast as we could. Marla looked around at her friends. What? She said definitively. I don't believe in ghosts. I do, Charlie said. She felt like she was taking from a great distance. She was almost surprised when they could hear her. I mean, not ghosts, but memories. I think they linger whether there's someone's there or not. The house, her whole house, was imbued with memory, with loss, with longing. It hung in the air like humidity. The walls were saturated like the wood had soaked in it. It had been there before she came, and it was there now. It would be there forever. It had to be. There's too much, too great and a vast a weight for Charlie to have brought it with her. That doesn't make any sense, Jessica said. Memory is in our brains, like literally stored in our brain. You can see it on a scan. It can't exist outside of someone's mind. I don't know, John said. Think of all the places that leave. Atmosphere. Old houses, sometimes. Places where you walk in and you feel sad or nostalgic, even though you've never been there before. That's not other people's memories, though, Lamar said. That's subconscious cues, stuff we don't realize we're noticing. That tells us we should feel some way. Peeling paint, old fashioned furniture, glazed curtains, details that tell us to be nostalgic. Mostly things we pick up from movies, probably. I got lost out of Carnival when I was 4. I never got so scared in my life, but I don't think anybody's feeling suddenly desperate for their mom when they pass that Ferris wheel. Maybe they are, Marla said. I don't know. Sometimes I have little moments where it's like there's something I forgot, something I regret, or that I'm happy about, or something that makes me want to cry. But it's only for a split second. Then it's gone. Maybe we're all shedding our fear and regret and hope everywhere we go, and we're catching traces of people we've never met. Maybe it's everywhere. How is that different from believing in ghosts? Lamar asked. It's totally different, Marla said. It's not supernatural, and it's not like the souls of dead people. It's just people leaving their mark in the world. So it's the ghosts of living people? Lamar said. No. You're talking about people having some kind of essence that can hang around specific places after the person is gone, Lamar said. That's a ghost. No, it's not. I'm not saying it's right, Marla said. She closed her eyes for a minute, thinking. Okay, she said at last. Do you all remember my grandmother? I do, said Jason. She was my grandmother too. She was my dad's mom, not yours, Marla said. Anyway, you were only a year old when she died. I do remember her, Jason said quietly. Okay, Marla said. So she had collected dolls from the time she was a kid. She and my grandfather used to travel a lot after he retired, and she'd bring them back from all over the world. She had them from France, Egypt, Italy, Brazil, China, everywhere. She kept them in their own special room, and it was full of them, shelves and shelves of dolls, some tiny and almost as big as I was, and I loved it. One of my earliest memories was playing in the room with the dolls. I remember my dad will always warn me to be careful, and my grandmother will laugh and say, toys will be played with. I have a favorite, a 21-inch red-haired doll in a short, shiny white dress like Shirley Temple. I call her Maggie. She is from the 1940s, and I loved her. I told her everything, and when I was lonely, I could imagine myself in that room playing with Maggie. My grandmother died when I was 6, and when my dad and I went to see my grandfather for the funeral, he told me I should pack a doll to keep from the collection. I went into the room to get Maggie, and as soon as I walked through the door, something was wrong. It was as though the light had changed, become darker, harsher than it used to be. I looked around, and the lively, playful poses of the dolls now seemed unnatural, disjointed. It was though all of them were staring at me. I don't know what they wanted. Maggie was in the corner, and I took a step toward her, then stopped. I met her eyes, and instead of painted glass, I saw a stranger. I turned and ran. I raced down the hall as though something might be chasing me, not daring to look back until I reached my father's side. He asked if I had picked a doll, and I just shook my head. I never went back to that room. Everyone went silent. Charlie was transfixed, still seeing little Marla running for her life. What happened to the dolls? Carlton asked, only half breaking the spell. I don't know. I think my mom sold them to another collector when my grandfather died, Marla said. Sorry, Marla, Lamar said. It's still just tricks of the mind. You missed your grandmother, you're frightened of death, and dolls were inherently freaky. Shirley broke in, wanted to head off the argument. Is everybody done eating? We have to go soon. We still have plenty of time, Carlton said, looking down at his watch. It's like 5 minutes away. Something else fell out of his mouth, landing next to the first strip of food. John looked around the table from person to person as though he were waiting for something. We have to tell him, he said, looking at Charlie. Oh, yeah, we totally do, Jessica said. Tell us what? Jason piped up, picking over the back of Marla's seat. Shh, Marla said half heartedly. She was looking at John. Tell us what? John dropped his voice, forcing everyone to lean in closer. Charlie did it too, eager to hear, even though she knew exactly what he was going to say. We went to Freddy's last night, he said. Freddy's is still there? Marla exclaimed too loud. Shh, Jessica said, making frantic hand movements. Sorry, Marla whispered. I just can't believe it's still there. It's not, Carlton said, raising his eyebrows and grinning enigmatically at Lamar. It's hidden, John explained. They were supposed to knock it down to build a mall, but they didn't. They just built around it. Entombed it, John corrected. And you got in? Lamar said. Charlie nodded confrontation. No way. What it was like? Marlo asked. Exactly the same, John said. It was like everyone vanished, Charlie said softly. I want to go too. You have to take us, Marla said. Jessica cleared her throat hesitantly and they all looked at her. I don't know, she said slowly. I mean, today? Should we? We have to see it, Lamar said. You can't tell us this is not let us to see it. I want to see it, Jason chimed in. What's Freddy's? They ignored him. His eyes were wide and he was angry on every word. Maybe Jessica's right, John said with reluctance. Maybe it's disrespectful to go tonight. There was a moment's pause, and Charlie knew they were waiting for her to talk. She was the one they were all really afraid of offending. They needed her permission. I think we should go, she said. I don't think it's disrespectful. It's almost a way of honoring what happened. She looked around the table. Jessica was nodding. Charlie wasn't sure it was much of an argument, but they didn't need to be convinced. They want an excuse. Marla twisted herself to look back at John's plate. Are you done eating? She asked. Yep, he said. Marla pointed to the game in his hand. You know you can't play in that during the ceremony, she said. Yep, I'm serious, Jason. I'm locking it in the car. Why can't you just lock me in the car? He muttered. I'd love to. Marla said under her breath as she turned back to the group. Okay, we can go. They headed to the school in a caravan, the boys in Carlton's car. Marla followed, and Charlie bringing up the rear. We should have carpooled, Jessica said idly, staring out the window. It had occurred to Charlie. I guess, she said. On the other hand, I'm not sure I want to ride with Marla and Jason, Jessica said plainly. They were kind of intense, Shirley agreed. When they arrived, the parking lot was already jammed full. Shirley parked on a side street, and what she hoped was a legal spot, and they walked to the school along the familiar sidewalk. Jessica shivered. I've got goosebumps. It is weird to be here, Charlie said. The school looked unchanged from the outside, but the fence was new and slick and black, plastic coating chain link. The whole town was like this, a mix of old and new, familiar and not. The things that had changed seemed out of place, and the things that had remained the same made Charlie feel out of place. It must be so strange for Carlton to live here, she thought. I know this is a nostalgia trip for all of you, but I just live here, he had said. Somehow, Charlie was not sure she believed that. When they got to the playing field behind the school, the bleachers were already full. Rows of folding chairs had been laid out in front of them to add more seating, and Charlie spotted Marla and the boys at the front. Oh, great, she said. I don't want to sit in the front row. I don't mind, Jessica said. Charlie looked at her. Of course you don't. She wanted to say, you're you. Yeah, she said instead. No big deal. Half the town must be here, she observed as they made their way to the group, where two seats had been saved. There was one open in the front row next to Carlton and one right behind it, beside Marla. Jessica winked at Shirley and sat down next to Carlton. She leaned toward him and they started whispering. Shirley repeated herself to Marla. There's a lot of people here. Yeah, Marla said. I mean, it's a small town, you know. Michael's. It was a big deal. Plus, his parents still live here. People remember. People remember. Charlie echoed softly. There is a small raised stage set up in front of them with a podium and four chairs. Behind the chairs, a string was suspended. Projected on it was a larger than life picture of Michael. It was a close up, just his face. It was not the most flattering picture. His head just thrown back at an odd angle, his mouth open in laughter, but it was perfect. A joyful moment snatched up and kept. Not created, he looked happy. Darn it, Marla said softly. Charlie looked at her. She was dabbing at her eyes with the tissue. Charlie put an arm around her. I know, she said. The sound system came on suddenly with a whine that slowly faded. Four people walked on stage. A heavyset man in a suit who went straight to the microphone, an elderly woman, a couple, a man, and a woman.